Hey guys, by popular demand tonight we talk about another 1980s technique. It's the bass lines done with the Arpeggio feature on synthesizers. Back in the 80s, sequencers were used very often to create songs, early sequencers. But if you didn't happen to have a sequencer, you could still use the arpeggiator on your synthesizer in conjunction with a drum machine, with the pulse from a drum machine, and kind of fake a quasi sequencer line or pure arpeggio lines. So for tonight I'm going to use a Juno 60 and a TR-707 drum machine. And again, these are not necessarily the instruments that are played in the original songs, but it's just that these are easy for me to program and play in real time. Let's get to it. Okay, one of the most famous bass line patterns of the 80s was the synth octave bass. And that one kind of stemmed already from the late 70s, from the disco era, where it was done with real bass guitars. And also already by the late 70s, with songs like Funky Town, you started to see that octave bass happening in songs. For example, Funky Town, you know, the part that goes like talk about movie, Funky Town, and you know, that type of pattern. This pattern kind of exploded in the 80s. A lot of pop songs use this synth octave bass. Now in the 80s, if you didn't have a sequencer, because they back then they were kind of still in their infancy, and they were expensive. Not everybody had one. You could use an arpeggiator to emulate that effect. For instance, you could engage the arpeggiator, in this case of Juno 60, up and down mode, range of 2 octaves, and you can do the same thing with one finger. And then it's just a matter of following the notes and go to the rhythm of the song to play the song, like this. Now, you could also sync it to a drum machine. For example, Blue Monday by New Order, that song actually was sequenced and it used the source and a different drum machine. But for the purpose of tonight's demo, let's look at how we can play Blue Monday using that technique, using the arpeggiator instead of a sequencer. So let's engage the pulse from the drum machine and let's play Blue Monday, which goes something like that. Okay, how does it work technically? I am just sending a rimshot pulse signal from the 707 to the Juno 60, and it's straight 8s to the Juno. On the 707 it sounds like this if you raise the volume of the rimshot. And let me lower the volume of all the other instruments so you can hear the rimshot by itself. Now when you engage the arpeggiator on the Juno, it follows the pulse from the 8 notes from the rimshot, and it's set it up, down 2 octaves, so that's what it does, like this. But now there is another section in Blue Monday that's a little bit harder to recreate without a sequencer as it was used in that song. And it's the part that goes with the double note on the top, something like this. Now on simple arpeggiators, up and down arpeggiators like many synths of the 80s have, it's a little bit harder to emulate that, but you can still do it. You just need to modify the rim shot pulse a little bit. So instead of having straight 8s, you have to go like something like that. Let's record that right now. Now you have this pattern here, and when you send the signal to the arpeggiator, you get this pattern now. Now you don't want to use a 2 octave, you want to go back to 1 octave. And then you do want to play the octaves with the hand. So let's raise the volume of everything again and see what happens when we play simple octave up and down. You get that second note on the top like Blue Monday has. Something like this. It's a little bit tricky. You have to find the right spot, the right groove with your left hand, but it can be done very easily without a sequencer. Okay, let's look at other types of patterns that you can easily obtain by changing the pulse rhythms from the drum machine or the sequencer. In this example, we're going to set the pulse at 16 notes instead of 8s, like this. And of course the sequencer on the arpeggiator on the Roland Juno 60 will follow suit, something like this. And when you add other instruments, you can play lines such as I Feel Love, just by varying the notes on the Juno, like this. Okay, let's look at what we can do by varying the pattern again. I loaded this pattern in on the rim shot. And again, this is another famous pattern of the 80s. So this is what sounds like triggering the Juno arpeggiator. And when you put other instruments on the drum machine together, you can play something like the Safety Dance. Okay guys, of course by varying the patterns that you create on the unit that generates the pulse towards the arpeggiator, you can come up with all kinds of different patterns. unique patterns. It's the sky is the limit. So I hope this gives you a little bit of more information on how to create those typical late 70s and 80s bass lines. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.